My name is Danielle, and I will be discussing Boy Leading a Horse by Pablo Picasso, which is currently located at the Crystal Bridges Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas. It is a part of the William S. Paley collection, A Taste for Modernism. This painting is very interesting for many reasons, one being that scholars haven't been able to determine the meaning of the painting, though they do believe it has one. Pablo Picasso painted this in 1906 during his Rose period. Picasso was a Spaniard but spent most of his life in France. He began studying under his father at the School of Fine Arts in Barcelona at age 13, and then moved on to study at the prestigious Madrid Royal Academy of San Fernando. Depending on the current events in his life, Pablo Picasso developed many different periods of painting styles, such as the Blue Period, Rose Period, and Cubism. He was a man of many talents, including sculptor, printmaker, ceramicist, stage designer, and playwright. Some of his most well-known works are The Three Musicians, The Old Guitarist, as well as The Weeping Woman. He was influenced greatly by El Greco, as well as Edgar Degas, both prominent artists throughout art history. In 1973, over 22,000 pieces of his art had been found. The composition of Boy Leading a Horse consists of mainly a young boy in the nude leading a horse in a barren landscape. The lower half of the painting has much darker and more defined lines than the upper half. This painting is asymmetrical as well. There is an illusion of depth, with the light landscape in the background disappearing and the upfront ground being much more defined. Other than this change in color, there isn't much perspective. The painting doesn't have a vanishing point. One's eyes are drawn to the darker lines of the closer images, though. The color reflects Picasso's Rose period, composed of warm chromatic colors. There is a contrast between the darker horse and the lighter boy. The painting is very naturalistic, almost perfectly showing a real young male body as well as real horse's body, with emphasis on the muscle outline. One way to analyze this painting is through the psychoanalysis approach. This young, dark-haired boy could be Picasso himself, leading his horse or a symbol for his followers. Boy Leading a Horse was painted at the very beginning of Picasso's Rose period, also known as a shift in attitude for the painter. His old Blue period represented pessimism, and the Rose period represents a more optimistic time. This painting could be Picasso's displaying his newfound confidence and pride in his works in a subtle way. Sources say that Picasso as a young man had watchful and piercing black eyes, and these seem to be translated onto the young boy in the painting. His strong gaze at something off in the distance to the right suggests a destination for him and his horse. Whether it's moving in a new direction towards a new life or striving to reach a far-off goal, the boy and his horse are determined to reach something. Their confidence brings about a feeling of leadership and gives the viewer an urge to follow them. This powerful painting engages its viewers and contributes to the psychoanalysis approach. Picasso began his career during the Impressionist, Post-Impressionist, and Symbolist movements. His paintings were a product of the 19th century Romanticism, which stressed emotions, aesthetics, and imagination. In his Rose period, during which Boy Leading a Horse was painted, Picasso combined Expressionism with Classicism. He used warm colors to convey happiness and optimism while depicting real-life scenes containing alternate meanings. This is the basis of symbolism. The painting belongs to the Symbolist movement due to its possible alternate meaning of Picasso leading his followers or his life out of the more depressed Blue period. Boy Leading a Horse depicts a certain mood of optimism and determination, with the young naked boy controlling this large and powerful horse. The nakedness of the boy depicts a confidence in himself, and he shows no sign of shyness. This style of human body comes from the naturalistic approach of the classical Greeks. His body is somewhat idealized, with emphasis on the muscles and the male private areas as seen in Michelangelo's David. Some of the other historical influences are El Greco's St. Martin and the Beggar, showing a young naked boy approaching a horse with a well-dressed man atop of it. Picasso's paintings were often influenced by El Greco. Picasso was fascinated with El Greco's use of dark lines and elongated figures. Also, the horse in Picasso's painting closely resembles the horse in Mantegna's Parnassus, which is a depiction of Hermes and Pegasus. A possible link to Pegasus and Picasso is that Pegasus in Spanish is Pegaso, sounding a lot like Picasso when pronounced. I chose this piece of work because it is very different from the famous Picasso works that automatically come to most people's minds. Most of his paintings have a very detailed description of what their content means, and this one does not. It is mysterious, and the ideas are only guesses of what the actual meaning could be. I love the serene yet determined face in the young boy in this painting. It reminds me of the face of the Critias boy from classical Greece era. I also love the openness in the background. This painting is so simple, yet it can mean so much. It is just a boy and his horse wandering through life. Being a girl who is raised with horses, I can personally relate to the feeling of loyalty and love exchanged between a human and their horse. I do agree with the idea that this is Picasso showing himself coming out of a depressed state and turning over a new leaf. Leading a horse without reins shows true dominance and confidence in one's abilities. Overall, I believe this is a unique painting of Picasso's that has been overlooked by our society.